Merry Christmas.
Linus, surprised, purses her lips. Her face turns into a slight, forced smile.
Same to you.
Linus turns back around and walks away. Charlie turns around as well. She smiles to herself. She walks towards a large Christmas tree in the distance. She looks up and smiles. She heads towards it. Yay!
All right. Well, thank you all for coming. I'm glad we could make this work. We could all read it together. I guess the next time we see each other is when we film this scene, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
So that's going to be the 17th of October. We'll be filming it here in this dining room table right here.
Right. And 16th's the church bit.
Yes, it is.
So there's that too.
Always wanted to be a redneck.
There's still time.
There's always time.
It's never too late to be a
You're
redneck.
saying like it's past time.
Hey everyone, how's it going? I just want to thank everyone for their support of Charlie's Christmas, those who left likes, comments, those who shared the movie. I appreciate all of it very much. I just thought it would be fun to talk a bit about the behind the scenes process of the movie and show some behind the scenes clips along the way that we filmed. So, here you go. Like in February 2018, I believe, I had finished this film called Only the Lonely. That was a movie I made in high school. Not the greatest movie, but it was an early stepping stone for my film work. This was a film about someone who's depressed and it goes through their day as they contemplate possibly taking their own life. It just so happened that we filmed it around December. So there was some Christmas imagery in there. I wasn't thinking about Christmas while I was making that movie, but then when I finished it, my film teacher in high school, Jim Shields, said, "Hey, this kind of reminds me of Charlie Brown, the original kid that's depressed during the holidays." That comment kind of stuck with me, and I decided I wanted to make a movie that fully embraces that concept. I wanted to actually make a Christmas-themed movie that explored the themes of the holiday. Charlie Brown was a big thing for me growing up. I think for most people it is. It's such a huge thing and it has such a mass appeal. It doesn't matter what race you are, your political views, what your gender is, everyone loves Charlie Brown. And as a kid, I was always relating to Charlie Brown by far the most out of the characters. Charles Schulz, the creator of Charlie Brown, was actually a really interesting person who had his own depression, and he used Charlie Brown as a vessel to vent some of that depression. And I thought that doing a spin-off of Charlie Brown was a cool idea because people would instantly recognize that and be like, oh yeah, this is Charlie Brown, I recognize that. And that would allow the audience to have a sort of entryway point into this new film. And then hopefully there would be things in the film that challenged them, made them think in different ways. One of the things I wanted to make abundantly clear early on was that this doesn't exist in the Charlie Brown universe. This is an homage to Charlie Brown, but these are not the same characters. So I decided to swap the genders of each character so that no one would be confused. I wanted them to get the references, but I didn't want anyone to think this is supposed to take place in the world Charles Schulz created. The gender swap was an easy way to sort of show that. I wrote the original outline of the story, and it went through several different versions. Originally, it ended a lot sadder with Charlie and Linus passing each other and saying nothing. I ended up changing that, which made the movie a lot more optimistic. I was lucky enough to get Maddie Ferre involved in this movie. She's the co-writer, co-director, producer, and star of the film. I met her through film school, and I noticed she was talented in a lot of different areas. So I decided to recruit her, and it ended up being a really good collaborative process. In college, I hadn't really found my footing yet. Like, I collaborated with a few people, but I hadn't really taken advantage of the resources that my college had. I should have done a lot more to be at place in college, but a lot of it was kind of trial and error. I would ask people if they wanted to co-write or co-direct, and they'd often be like, yeah, and then a month later they'd be like, nah. I expected the same thing to happen with Maddie, so I was surprised when she actually committed to the project. She had a bunch of revisions for the script. I'm not a great person at writing humor, so she added a lot of humor to the script, which was a great addition. Like, this is a thing that's referencing Charlie Brown. It should have humor in it. Maddie was able to make the film have a much lighter tone than what my original outline was. My original outline was pretty much just depressing. She summed up a lot of the character dynamics, and she basically decided how the whole family was gonna be.
You ready for me?
Yep.
These poor children in Africa would be happy to have this food. They're starving.
Towards the beginning of the production, I was getting really nervous because she was getting a lot of people involved. And that was great, but it also was terrifying because the films I had made beforehand had very small crews. It was basically just my dad doing camera and me directing and doing sound at the same time. At first, I was having trouble finding my voice. I remember early on, someone from the crew said, "This is basically Maddie Ferre's film," and I was like, yeah, I mean, I can't argue with you there. Because she was just being the most vocal. She was talking to the crew and doing a lot of things. I would make most of the major decisions, like locations and actors, and she would really get that stuff done. She would communicate with people who needed to be communicated with. I was afraid because it seemed like she was doing too much, like I wasn't pulling my weight. And then we finally did filming and it went really well, I think. I felt like I was able to be a lot more vocal. I was able to communicate my vision to people. It wasn't just me going, I don't know, what do you think, the whole time. Because that was one of my problems on past sets. Like I would leave things to the actors and people on the crew. I'd be like, I don't know, what do you want to do? And sometimes that's okay, but a lot of the times the director needs a clear vision.
Maybe y'all should start like over my shoulder first. Like, let's just get all of Ryan's coverage first.
Yeah. Sounds good?
So we'll start with this one. So like, I'll sit here, you'll probably be over my shoulder right here.
Yeah.
If anyone knows anything about me, they know that I'm an extremely anxious person. I mean, most people are nowadays. Everyone's running rabid with anxiety. I'm not alone in that. I was constantly feeling like I wasn't doing good enough, constantly feeling inadequate. There would be several times where I would text Maddie and be like, hey, am I doing okay? Am I the worst person ever? What's going on? So a lot of the time I just had to ground myself and remember that these people wouldn't be working with me if they didn't like me. They're getting something out of this project. I ended up getting Jane Young as Linus, but she also did cinematography, so she was cinematographer and actor. This was a common theme where the crew would do acting.
Look, just past here.
Yep, totally. I can do that.
Same thing with you, Cole.
Sorry, say that again.
Look just past the camera like you're looking at Charlie who's sitting here.
Okay.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So I'm basically okay, I'm just gonna pull forward.
Yeah, okay, that works. Jane, does it look like I'm looking into the camera?
Another somewhat major role was Lucy the pastor. Originally in the script, I wrote this character as a therapist. Because in Charlie Brown, you got Lucy being the therapist trying to help Charlie Brown and doing a miserable job. That was originally the idea that Lucy in our version was an actual therapist. But then eventually we had the church scene written in, so I thought why not combine the therapist with a pastor? So we could have more of the religious themes in there. I cast Ryan Dunleavy, one of my film teachers, and he was excellent. I kind of based that character off of a real pastor that I had at one point in my life.
Come down, and the Lord will come down upon you, and you shall feel His love.
You getting this time?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hey, you want to edit a blooper reel at the end of your
Hell yes. I always do blooper reels.
I also always...
Come down.
We need a choreographer in there. We need someone to choreograph a little dance number for it.
In terms of Christmas, the thing that really changed for me over the years was my perspective on things. You know, I grew up thinking Santa Claus was real, and I was taught that, you know, this was a holiday for Jesus. When I was pretty young, I started, you know, thinking critically about the whole Santa thing, and I kind of realized it didn't really add up, and I realized about Santa pretty early on. And my perspective towards, you know, Jesus and the religion part of Christmas had also changed. So I kind of had to do a lot of thinking about Christmas and, you know, why I personally celebrate it. You know, the things that Christmas are about for me. And a lot of that is put in this movie. You know, how my perspective on Christmas has changed over the years. And it also has quite a bit of my experience with religion in there. That's definitely what inspired certain parts of this movie as well. I've always really liked Christmas personally, even though I've had like changing perspectives on it. I channeled a lot of my thoughts towards Thanksgiving in this movie, which is, you know, kind of funny because it's a Christmas movie, but I really hate Thanksgiving. So a lot of that was channeled in this movie and just my experience with family. That could be a whole separate video. But I was definitely surprised as I, you know, came to be an adult, like getting out of high school, talking to people without like being a kid, super excited about the holidays all the time. Like now that people had hindsight and were adults, like I came to hear from a lot of people that they really don't like Christmas. And there's, you know, they feel upset during this time of year. And that really was surprising to me at the time. I don't know, I hadn't processed that kind of thing yet. I just assumed everyone enjoyed Christmas, I guess. Because I always had enjoyed Christmas, even though there were some conflicting feelings over the years. So a lot of that is also put into this movie. I think the biggest driving force behind this movie, though, is the friendship element. This movie, at its core, is about losing people, specifically friends, and how the holidays can amplify that loss. I've lost a lot of friends in my life, and a lot of that was my own fault. It wasn't always my fault, but a lot of the time it was. This movie is about the loss of a person who's still living, and how most of the time the love for that person you lost is still there. As with most of the stuff I write, I was kind of working through some of my own struggles and putting it into a story. And I hope that in some way that was able to resonate with people. I also wanted to talk about how this very well could be the last film I ever make. There's a lot of reasons for that. I don't really have anyone to work with. I don't have the same resources I once did. I don't have any ideas for future films. I could go on. People come and go, and most of the people I've worked with in the past just aren't really accessible anymore. I don't want this to be my last movie. I'd love to make more, but I just don't know if that's in the cards for me. I've done a lot of thinking about this, and I've tried to accept that this might be it for me. And I've tried to be okay with that. Like, I am enough, I've done enough. So if this does end up being my last movie, I just want to thank everyone for allowing it to be such a great experience. Hopefully I went out with a bang.
How do we install a lens, Aiden?
When you put this cover on, you're going to want to make sure that the Canon is straightforward, or else my OCD is going to manifest and kill you. And then you're going to want to put this cap on the lens, so that way you don't get anything in like the little sensor. And then we're going to put this over here for now.
Okay.
I don't know where the 50 bag is.
Our viewers are waiting.
God, it's so demanding. Now we're going to take this right here is the Canon 85mm lens. You can tell because it says 85 on it. And so you're going to want to take this cap off, expose it, but don't leave it exposed for too long.
No dust.
Do the same over here. No dust, no farts, no coconuts. And then you're going to want to line up. You see this white dot right here. You're going to want to line that up with the red dot. And then you're going to want to get mad at the pull focus because it's in the way. And then you're going to turn it. You hear that click? That's when